First thing to know is that the Acolyte takes place nearly 100 years before the events of the Skywalker saga, meaning if you haven't played any games or read any books, this will be the earliest content you've seen on the Star Wars timeline. At this point in history, the Jedi are in a so-called Golden Age, and have been for about 400 years. However, that Golden Age is about to come to an abrupt end. During this era known as the High Republic, the Jedi are in a crucial role as galactic protectors. The Republic military is entirely gone during this time, so Jedi are often the only defenders of certain systems and generally looked upon as problem solvers / judges / law enforcers on each of that system's planets. This is quite an enormous job, as you might guess, but luckily for the Order, at this time there are numerous Jedi, far more than we have seen on the smaller big screen before. But even with their massive size, the Jedi are constantly spread thin by a number of sector-sized threats. All of this responsibility placed on the Jedi's shoulders dragged them more and more into galactic events, as well as cementing them as powerful actors in the Galactic Republic, getting the Order far more involved in worldly affairs than they really would have liked. In other words, you are going to see a lot of decisions in this show made by the Jedi be motivated by political considerations rather than just the core tenets of the Jedi Order. And if this seems like a massive disaster in waiting to you, don't worry, it is! But to contextualize this particular moment in time that the Acolyte takes place in, there are one or two major events leading up to this that can help us understand how everything we see could possibly occur. First and foremost, the state of the Outer Rim. At the time of the Acolyte, the Jedi have lost not one, but two major branches of their reach into the Outer Rim, and even more smaller bases. Nearly 100 years before this show, the Jedi's Starlight Beacon, a massive spaceport serving as the stronghold for the Jedi in the outer reaches of the galaxy, was destroyed, and with it went the stability of many of the surrounding planets as the lands became overwhelmed with scum and villainy. This event forced the Jedi to leave the territories unprotected, and inspired many up-and-coming Jedi to attempt to create a new stronghold. Simultaneously, a pair of Jedi known as Dagan Gera and Santari Khri attempted to establish a new Jedi stronghold on the hidden planet discovered by Gera, known as Tanalorr. Tanalorr would have served as a new bastion of light in the Outer Rim, but unfortunately, it suffered much the same fate as Starlight Beacon. It too was destroyed. What's most interesting about the relation of Tanalorr, first seen in the game Jedi Survivor, to this new show is the time gap between them. Both Tanalorr and the Beacon fell around 232 BBY, and with the Acolyte taking place around 100 to 119 BBY, that means for around 100 years of this so-called Golden Age, it hasn't been so golden for a large part of the galaxy. Now you might be thinking, what does this have to do with the Acolyte? And the answer is, it probably doesn't, but it's pretty cool, and it might have come up. Plus, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I just went ahead and included it. But it's not irrelevant. It does provide context to the state of the galaxy and public opinion of the Jedi, and it adds context to how a Dark Acolyte might have been able to operate during this time. The Outer Rim is a big place, and the Jedi hardly have a footprint out there anymore. There are entire planets and populations in the Outer Rim that haven't seen a Jedi in living memory, and probably won't for a good long time. There is a reason why Anakin was so excited to meet Qui-Gon after all. But going back to that Dark Acolyte, there is a bit of fun lore for this period to keep in mind in regards to Dark Force users, and particularly our favorite icons, the Sith. The Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years at the time of the Phantom Menace, which means they've been extinct for 900 years at the time of the Acolyte. That means even Yoda has never seen one, and there's probably no living Jedi at this time who has. However, that doesn't mean there are no Dark Force users around. Fallen Jedi, the Night Sisters, and even the occasional Force-sensitive kid with a holocron do still exist during this period, and our Acolyte could be any one of those. Plus, the Jedi are pretty selective when it comes to labeling Force users as Sith. Even extremely skilled combatants like Asajj Ventress or Savage Opress were not given the title of Sith during the Clone Wars, and that was at a time where the Jedi had given up their delusions of the Sith being extinct. So even if the Dark Acolyte does end up being Sith adjacent, there remains every possibility that the Jedi just don't consider them worthy of the designation, thereby keeping the old lore intact. Also, Ki-Adi and the rest of the Council could have just been lying when they said the Sith were extinct in the first place. I mean, Yoda somehow knew there were always two of them, so obviously at least he and Mace were in on the secret, and the Council never did trust Qui-Gon, so they could have just been making a show of it. Or they could really be that stupid, I don't know. You sit on top of an ancient Sith monument long enough, it's gonna do some funky stuff to your brain. Speaking of the Jedi Council, I think it'd be fun to quickly point out some notable faces in the Jedi Order that you may or may not recognize from other materials, because it's kind of fun to sit back and see if I can spot one every episode, kind of a Star Wars nerd version of Where's Waldo. Starting out small, it's interesting to note that within the High Republic novels and comics, Jarl Poof has actually been a big player in the Jedi Order for some time. You might know him as the long neck guy from The Phantom Menace, or more likely, from Robot Chicken.
What about you, Dogface? Did you know that now it was a council?
But actually, even by the time of the Nihil conflict in 229 BBY, Master Poof was already a member of the Jedi Council, and a respected one, considering Chancellor So turned to him to deal with it when a member of the Jedi Council was executed on live broadcast. He sorta did, and he managed to stick around pretty much up until the Clone Wars. Next up is Snake Man. Oppo Rancisis is another member of the Jedi Council that we see in The Phantom Menace, and while he is a background character at best at that time, he's actually kind of a big deal during the High Republic. Master Rancisis was an absolute legend in the field of battle meditation, with his abilities being so renowned that he was put in charge of the Jedi's effort to establish and defend their bastion at Tanalorr. Now, ultimately he failed, and he had to order a retreat from Tanalorr with unfortunate results, but that is mostly due to the tactical impossibilities of defending an entire planet from orbital bombardment using nothing but lightsabers. Still, he didn't die there, and that means he is definitely a possibility when it comes to appearing in the Acolyte. Ranesh Jaro is actually a confirmed prominent character in this show, with dialogue and trailer shots, so it's less speculation on her so much as a who is she for most people. In the moments we see her, she is an elder Jedi Master, but in the books and comics predating the show, she was able to ascend the ranks of the Jedi from a teenage prodigy and became one of the youngest Jedi Knights in a generation at age 15. An interesting detail about her to me is her lifespan. Mirialans have an average lifespan of 68 standard years, but within the lore, Mirialans who are keenly attuned to the Force could live up to 200, which matters here because at the time of this show, she would have to be well into her hundreds based on our previous knowledge. Still, since we already know she's a character in the show, it will be interesting to see what she gets up to. Alright, everybody knows Yoda. He's the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, and even at this time, the dude's 800 years old, with 10 times that number in Jedi trained by him. There are few Jedi more well known than Yoda, and even though the creator of the Acolyte has so far denied it, I'm still holding out hope that we can catch a glimpse of this old legend, maybe with a few less wrinkles, somewhere in the background. Of course, I'm probably going to have fun watching the show even if my Jedi spotting guide remains unmarked. At the time of recording for this video, I have already watched the first 2 episodes, and I'm so far enjoying my experience. I really like Master Saul, and I want to see where this goes. I'm holding judgment for now, but I am ever hopeful. Anyway, I think you now know everything you need to know to watch The Acolyte. Until next time, I have been Austin, and this has been College of Lore. Thanks for watching.